Welcome into the Toyota Center. Megan Olivi and Marc Raimondi here. We are talking UFC 271 because there's a lot to talk about.
Sure is.
I want to get into this rematch right away because, at first when it was booked, I didn't know what I was going to feel about it. Was I going to be excited or not? Now, I can't wait for this. I feel like there are so many unanswered questions about both of their evolutions, both of their mental approach, their emotional approach. Marc, for you, what's the biggest storyline in the main event?
I think the biggest storyline is how much has Robert Whittaker improved, because we've seen him now. He took the loss, obviously, against Adesanya in 2019, but he has worked his way back, I think, as well as almost anyone has worked their way back to a title. He's beaten Darren Till, he's beaten Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, all top contenders. He looked good in all those fights. Is it enough, though, to beat Israel Adesanya? That is the big question. We know he's improved, but he did get knocked out last time. Has he improved enough to challenge Adesanya?
Right. They both have 3 wins since their original meeting. And then Israel Adesanya did attempt to move up and become a double champion. That didn't work out for him, but he's still undefeated at middleweight. And there's always so much to be said about the challenger and what they have done differently. But for Israel, what have his improvements been?
Yeah, I think he's constantly evolving as far as the grappling and the wrestling, his takedown defense. I know that against Jan Blachowicz, who is... Look, he was a much bigger man.
Yeah.
He was able to take Adesanya down a few times, but I think people forget there is some revisionist history about that fight. It was not a blowout. That was not a blowout for Blachowicz. That was actually a pretty close fight. Adesanya won 2 rounds, and there was at least 1 or 2 that were also very close. It could have really gone either way until the end. So I think that people kind of put that against Adesanya unfairly. I think he's gotten better since the Whittaker fight too, which is another wrinkle that, okay, Whittaker's gotten better, but so is Izzy.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm interested to hear your take then with this revisionist history of UFC 243. Because we know that Robert Whittaker was hurt at the end of the first round. He was out of the fight in the second round. But the beginning of that first, what did you think in terms of the competitiveness from both men in the first round of the first fight?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because that's another... I'm glad you kind of piggybacked on the revisionist history, because I think a lot of people, they remember it being a blowout for Adesanya. It really wasn't. It was a close first round. Whittaker was very much in that fight, and I feel like he rushed a little bit.
Right.
Because he's going to be the shorter guy. It's going to be the same case again on Saturday. He is going to have the shorter reach. So it's going to be more difficult for him to get in, on a guy like Adesanya, but he rushed in the first fight, and I think that's going to has to be a big part of his game plan. How does he create the angles? How does he create the entry points to get inside Adesanya's very long 80-inch reach for middleweight? That has to be it. But he had success doing that with his jab and angles early in the first round. And the thing about Izzy is that when you make a mistake coming in, if you rush, you're going to get knocked out, and that's how he won.
No, exactly. We'll see if Robert Whittaker can make those changes that he needs in order to land some of those takedowns, because he wants to. So that's our main event. That's a rematch we are all looking forward to, a top UFC 271. But in the co-main event, this is a really interesting matchup. It's 11 versus 3, so it's a big gap in the rankings. But it's a guy with tons of experience in Derrick Lewis, who just fought here, behind us in August for a UFC title. And then Tai Tuivasa, who eventually wants to fight for that title. Biggest fight of Tai's career?
100% the biggest fight of Tai's career. There's no doubt about it. And I feel like both guys are similar in a way where, they can win, they can lose, but people love them anyway. People enjoy watching them fight. Derrick Lewis is always fun. You put a microphone in front of him, he's gonna be funny and entertaining. Tai Tuivasa, the same thing. You put a sneaker in front of him, he's gonna be funny and entertaining with drinking the beer and whatnot. I did a shoey with cold brew yesterday for Sports Nation. Oh. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
But I do think it's a fun fight, and I do think it's huge for Tuivasa, because if he beats Lewis, look, Derrick is still one of the top 4 or 5 heavyweights in the world. Right. That is a huge leap for Tai if he wins this fight.
I think it'll be really interesting for the matchmakers to see what they do with each man after this fight, because there are a lot of factors in play here at heavyweight. But before we move on from the co-main event, this is something that I've thought about, probably shouldn't at all, but we know that Derrick Lewis is the hometown hero. We're here at the Toyota Center. They're going to love him. Tai Tuivasa is known for his walkouts, and people love these random songs that he picks. Who's the crowd rooting for here?
Ultimately, they're going to root for Derrick Lewis, but this is, look, if I'm going to borrow from my favorite sport, pro wrestling, this is a babyface versus babyface matchup. Both guys are going to get big cheers, I think. How can you boo Tai Tuivasa? And I would even argue that if Tai Tuivasa manages to win against Derrick Lewis, if he knocks him out and does a shoey, is the crowd not going to cheer for the shoey, Megan? I know that Derrick Lewis is the hometown guy.
I hate shoeys. I think they're gross.
I'm not a big fan of them either. Have I done a few of them once in a while? Sure. But I think my point stands, right? Am I wrong about this?
No, you're right. You're
the
right.
crowd is going to pop for Tai Tuivasa if he wins,
100%.
even if he's fighting the hometown boy because of the shoey factor.
Totally
it's a real
agree.
thing.
Totally agree.
And how about his shoey-vasa, like I mean that's
genius
to have his own brand of shoes for the shoey.
Absolutely
I mean, that's
genius.
Marketing 101.
Because we must revere shoes, honestly, as someone who
I
has
would
far too many of them. But before I let you go, is the pressure more on Derrick here again in Toyota,
Yes.
kind of looking to redeem himself at home? Or is it on Tai, who, his last huge fight was probably against JDS. That one didn't go his way. This is going to propel him into possibly even the top 5 of that heavyweight division.
I think there's more pressure on Derrick, but certainly not as much as there was when he fought Cyril Gane for the interim title here just a few months ago. I think that really did get to him, and I think he's admitted as much this week. Pressure is definitely more on Derrick, though, because he has to hold serve in that position. He's still one of the best heavyweights in the world. If he loses ground in that.
Right. No, absolutely. All right, Marc, before we leave the Toyota Center here and head downstairs for weigh-ins, I'm curious, what's a fight on this card or a fighter that really stands out to you that you're looking forward to that maybe hasn't gotten enough shine this week?
Yeah, I saw a quote. Actually, it was at Media Day with Alexander Hernandez. He's very upset about the placement of his fight against Renato Moicano. I don't put a whole ton of stock into where the fights are because I'm watching the whole card anyway. But maybe he has a little bit of a point because that is a fight that, when I'm looking at UFC 271, I'm circling Moicano versus Alexander Hernandez, that lightweight fight. It's going to be an action fight. It's two guys who are, up and coming, still kind of on the way up, not in their primes yet. I think that fight is really good and not getting kind of the conversation that other fights are getting on the card.
Well, he must be happy today because that got moved to the pay-per-view portion of the card.
You're right. So there you go, Alexander Hernandez.
I'm sure he's happy. Not that anyone's asking, but once again, I will give my unsolicited opinion. I'm looking forward to this Casey O'Neill, Roxanne Modafferi fight because it's a veteran versus a rising star, and I think that Roxanne has really done so much to pave the way for women mixed martial artists like Casey O'Neill. And I know Casey, has a lot of appreciation and respect for Roxanne, but I also think she's very tired of answering questions about Roxanne retiring. So we will see how all of that plays out. That one is on the ESPN prelims portion of the card, but UFC 271 stacked from the first fight on. Make sure you tune in. ESPNplus.com/PPV is where you can order yours. And Marc and I will be here covering the fights for you. So we'll see you later.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.